Now, it's one thing to move from one candidate to another to, pad one's D.C. resume. It would be another thing to undermine that candidate, to work towards their failure, and it would be 1,000 times worse to do this to a sitting president. Unfortunately, that has already happened to President Trump. Remember this article? Literally, someone who we have not yet been able to identify, who claims to be in the president's inner circle, did this. Headline New York Times: I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration. I work for the president, but like-minded colleagues and I have vowed to thwart parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. Quote, the dilemma, which he does not fully grasp, is that many of the senior officials in his own administration are working diligently from within to frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. From the White House to executive branch departments and agencies, senior officials will privately admit their daily disbelief at the commander-in-chief's comments and actions. Most are working to insulate their operations from his whims. This isn't the work of the so-called deep state, it's the work of the steady state. So why bother electing a president, right? Well, two issues come up in that piece. One, that the president must be second-guessed on foreign policy. Think Alexander Vindman in the Ukraine call. And second, anonymous claims Trump holds no conservative principles, and the writer shows a reverence for the late John McCain. Then there's this piece from The Atlantic that is beyond laughable on the surface, but here we go. Headline, Trump: Americans who died in war are losers and suckers. The president has repeatedly disparaged the intelligence of service members and asked that wounded veterans be kept out of military parades, multiple sources tell The Atlantic. Quote, when President Donald Trump canceled a visit to the Ain Marin American Cemetery near Paris in 2018, he blamed the rain for the last-minute decision, saying that the helicopter couldn't fly and that the Secret Service wouldn't drive him there. Neither claim was true. Trump rejected the idea of the visit because he feared his hair would become disheveled in the rain and because he did not believe it important to honor American war dead, according to 4 people with first-hand knowledge of the discussion that day. In a conversation with senior staff members on the morning of the scheduled visit, Trump said, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." In a separate conversation on the same trip, Trump referred to more than 1,800 Marines who lost their lives at Belleau Wood as suckers for getting killed. Now, the writer claims to have 4, count them, 4 anonymous sources who were with Trump. How much of a saboteur does one have to be to concoct this garbage? John Bolton, the John Bolton, the room where it happened guy, came out and said it's a lie. If anybody had an interest in nailing Trump, it would be Bolton, but there it is. Now, some would say this is because Trump is dangerous. Dangerous? Dangerous to who? Yes, the establishment politicians who feel their own power is being threatened by outsiders. See, the people who gave us decades of lousy trade deals, let our allies skate on paying for their own defense, not to mention failure to secure the border, those people. President Trump's greatest sin has been proving the establishment to be inept. Between all those awful trade deals and inability to get the border under control and the skyrocketing debt, Donald Trump has proven the professional political class to be nothing more than self-serving fakes. So they want him gone, including many Republicans. And you have so-called never-Trump Republicans scattered all over the media now. And they sit there with their new leftist friends. They pine for the good old days of the GOP. What good old days? The media hated that Republican Party too. Until Trump came along, the media fumed at George W. Bush as the dumbest and most dangerous president ever. But now, they love George W. Bush and his inner circle. Take the curious case of MSNBC's new star, Nicole Wallace. She was literally the communications director for former President George W. Bush, and the one that sold the Bush message that outraged the likes of Rachel Maddow and company. But here she is selling the opposite, the idea that Bush was so much better than Trump.
Norm busting is, someone from the campaign shows their face in the West Wing. George W. Bush didn't let campaign staff in the West Wing. Any meetings with campaign staff were held in the residence just to draw a physical boundary between when George W. Bush was thinking about his own reelection campaign and when he was doing his day job. This is like the audacity of the grift on full display all night. You got the Sun, who, has got New York AG on line 2 holding for him, Eric Trump, and they're wailing away about God knows what, making things up about Joe Biden. You've got the whole family really just, the campaign seems to be carried out and showcased and photographed inside the people's house.
Nowadays, the MSNBC crowd laps it all up and has forgotten all about their Bush derangement syndrome. But Wallace, the Republican, is now all in favor of all things left. Suckerfish, right? The problem is with the family, unless what we're talking about is Mary Trump. Then we love the family. Headline The Guardian: Mary Trump on her uncle Donald. I used to feel compassion for him, but that became impossible. Quote, there is no understanding Donald Trump without understanding his malignantly dysfunctional family, according to Mary, the first member of the Klan to publish a Trump biography and question his fitness for office. Too much and never enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man sold nearly 1 million copies on its first day of publication last week, after a failed attempt by the U.S. president's younger brother, Robert, to block it in court. And Mary is convinced that her uncle is racist. Would she also use terms such as fascist and white supremacist? I don't think he has any political ideology. For him, this is just expedient. I would say he behaves like a white supremacist. Certainly, he's acting on his own racism. He's doing racist things that are endangering people of color in this country. That's much more important. So whether he would describe himself as a white supremacist or not, he's certainly acting like one, unquote. For 30 years or more, we've had outsider candidates for president of the United States. On the conservative side, there was Steve Forbes, Ross Perot, the late Herman Cain, and of course, Donald Trump. Now, I'll leave out Ronald Reagan because he was a governor first, but now we've got a true outsider. So here's the argument. Useless establishment, fake promise-making politicians from all over the spectrum, along with the media and even from within the Trump inner circle, are so desperate to get Orange Man bad out that they've tried and continue to try everything and anything to destroy him. From the Russia hoax and impeachment to a bitter niece taping conversations with Donald Trump's own sister and handing over private tax information to newsrooms. Look, so far it hasn't worked, but they keep trying. They're trying tactic after tactic after tactic aimed at smearing him. I mean, how many unnamed sources do CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post have? They're probably not even real, or they're just low-level, bitter ankle biters. The establishment wants to make Americans believe it was a mistake to allow an outsider like Trump to take office. They want you to forget how great the economy was before the China virus. They're so scared of losing their own power, they will use anything against him. Even members of his own family are in on the action. Look, the swamp is not going to drain itself. These desk clingers, they've had their chances. They've had decades to make America great again. They are the problem. We need more outsiders with guts, not less.